All right, let's talk about the Medeco3, specifically the Medeco3's slider. Before I do that, I know some people may raise a stink about it, so I'll address it out of the gate. What I'm about to discuss is not sensitive information. It's not bypass related. I'm not giving away any secrets because Medeco makes this information, number one, available for free through literature that they'll send you and on their website itself. So what I'm going to be saying right now is more so just a repeat of what they already have out there. So save your pitchforks because what I'm going to be talking about is pretty well known. I'm just going to try to give a visual take on it and maybe share a little bit more of the nuances like in the last video that the technical manual doesn't. So with that said, let's talk about the Medeco3 slider. I'm going to call it M3, which is what's number one, stamped on the face of the cylinders. And then number two, that's what everybody else calls it, and it's just easier to roll off the tongue. So the M3 is the current Medeco platform with an active patent. The patent runs through at least 2021, and I say at least because just as they did with the X4 last month, they may be able to extend the patent a few years beyond that. M3 builds on the existing biaxial platform by incorporating the slider mechanism, which, as I said, is going to be the topic of this video. So by building on that platform with just that slider, they were able to allow Medeco dealers to utilize their same key machines, same pins, pin kits, all that. And that made the transition to be a M3 dealer, if you're already a biaxial dealer, very, very easy. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take it apart and do my best to show you how it works. You got to be very careful, so I don't know how much I can get clearly shown because the sidebar and the slider both have springs pressing against them, and if they're not contained within the housing or the shell of the cylinder itself, they can go flying. So I'm going to have to kind of keep my fingers on them at all times while demonstrating it. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to kind of explain in Medeco's own words what's going on here so that I'm not inventing any new terms or terminology and giving people another reason to go get pitchforks. So just as with the biaxial mortise cylinder video, we're going to hold it up and down and pull so that those hardened discs don't go anywhere. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to keep my hand on the slider. Actually, let's back up one bit. I want to show you something else about them. And I guess it helps to mention that when you're reinserting these, I don't know if you can do it without the key, but I know it, when you've got the key, I'm binding the sidebar. When you've got the key, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier. There. So let me back up by first starting and reading how Medeco describes it. There's two tabs that are along the top of the slider. These blocking tabs prevent the sidebar from moving inward when there's no key inserted, or if a key with the incorrect side bitting is used. And I'll give you an example of that. We don't have any pins loaded, obviously. Okay, so I'm just going to put the tip of the key in just to have something to turn against, and you can see turning left and right, and it's not letting me. That's because, like I just said, there's springs that are pressing that sidebar, which is probably about right here. It's pressing the sidebar forward with those blocking tabs. Now, because it's being pressed forward, those blocking tabs aren't lining up with the sidebar gate. Now, if I were to insert the correct key, or at least with the correct side bitting, I'm pushing that slider back towards the back of the cylinder, and that's aligning those gates under the aligning the tabs underneath the sidebar's gates, which allows the sidebar to push and drop into the plug when turned and allows me to rotate the plug. So that's how it works in very basic layman's terms. And like I said, the slider, I'm going to keep my fingers on this because I don't want them going flying everywhere. The slider is spring loaded, so you can see the spring right there. Actually, I'll pull the key out. Maybe we can get a little bit more. So I've got to keep finger on it, otherwise it may go flying. So there's the spring. It's spring loaded so that constant pressure is being applied to keep the sidebar from properly aligning with it. And you can see here, I can press in the sidebar a good bit here, but on this side, where the gate and fence aren't lining up, sorry, the tabs aren't lining up, I'm not able to press it in, and that's what keeps it locked. And that's kind of why they call it M3. I know it's the 3rd generation, but there's 3 points of locking: sidebar, shear line, and then the slider's the 3rd. So as you can see, it's not going in there. As I said, the slider is only going to move with the proper key, proper side biddings that press it to where it needs to be. As you can see, I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to repeat that a lot. You can see the bottom of the side bidding on that key is going to press it in. You can see the slider's moving, and that's what's going to allow everything to line up in that sidebar to move in and out. If I pull it out, I gotta let off the spring because I'm holding it so tight. See, I can't push it in anymore. Okay. So that's, in a nutshell, basically how it works, and I'll take it apart so you can see what everything looks like. And if you want some high definition pictures of these, go to lockwiki.com. There's a Medeco3 article on there, and he's got some very good pictures of the slider, which is what I've got in my hand right now. He's got some very good high definition pictures, which are going to display a lot better than this camera and this video. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense if you can see that as well as this. There you can see are the 2 blocking tabs. There's the hole for the spring itself. And down here is the portion that interacts with the side bidding on the key. And then I'll take off the sidebar. And you can see, just as I mentioned in the last video, the biaxial video, there are the gates that interface with the blocking tabs. So normally be up here pressed, pushing against, it's blocking it. When I put the right key in, allows it to drop in. Now, they couldn't pull that off with the existing sidebar that was manufactured at the time with the biaxial. And here's one of those, and here's one of the newer sidebars. Let's see if I can show you the difference. The legs on the newer sidebars got shorter. You can see the one on the left, this one here is the older one, and this one's the newer one. And you can see how the legs on the sidebar are shorter on this one. The reason that is because it's going to allow those locking tabs to move underneath it. Otherwise, if those were full length, they wouldn't move at all. They'd hit one and they wouldn't move anymore. So they cut it off, or trimmed them to the point. This is very hard to demonstrate because these are very small parts. They cut them off so that that slider can move underneath. So that's how that works. And I'll go over a little bit more about the slider in a bit. Specifically, we'll talk about step sliders, which is what I think makes this M3 pretty neat. I know some people like to say it was just a lazy way for them to extend the patent and it doesn't offer additional security and blah, blah, blah. That's their opinion. They're entitled to it. And but I'll show you what I think is cool about it in a second. I'll go ahead and reassemble this first. When reassembling, I found that it's a lot easier if you install the sidebar first, because otherwise, in the cutout right there, you can see it goes directly into the same channel as the sidebar. So, if I'm not careful, what'll happen is it'll go way up in there because the sidebar, you can see the right there, it's not there to block it, so it can go up in there and then it'd be a pain in the butt. And then I've got my spring already loaded. I'll press it in there, push it all the way down, let it go up on its own, and I'll kind of hold it in place. And then Like I said, I don't know if you can do it without the key. I've never tried it. I wouldn't imagine so, but could be wrong. Binding a little bit. There we go. So I'm in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the side biddings when I get to the point of why I think these are so neat. There's 6 possible positions on the side of the key that they call the side biddings. And here's a Medeco decoder. And if you've ever seen one of these, or if you have one and you wondered, what are these numbers for? That's for the sidebar, or side bidding. I'm gonna do that a bunch. What you do is you hold the shoulder up against the side of the decoder, and then the side bidding, which you can see is right here. See that 90-degree hit right there? That's the side bidding. When referenced against one of those lines, it'll tell you what your depth is. Now, I showed you earlier the slider itself. That one particularly is only on one plane. And when I say plane, I mean there's 2 possible planes. This key, if you can see, is its widest right here. And then here's the slider portion. Well, part of that slider portion can be cut away to match this thickness. And when you do that, you can create stepped sliders, which exponentially increases your master keying capabilities, because just as it is like a multiplex key system where you've got one key that can work multiple keyways, and the same thing with a slider. And I don't know if I can try my best to show you. It might come up. Your master plane. Oop, I gotta zero it. There we go. Your master plane is going to be about 95/100ths of an inch. That's a little bit high. And then your what they call the change plane, which I know this wouldn't cut, but if it were cut back, because this is not a stepped key, 65/100ths, a little low there, but you get the point. So here's where it gets cool, and this is the reason I like it. When you step those sliders, well, let me back up a little bit. Biaxial's got a little over 2.1 billion theoretical combinations. That's 6 depths times 6 angles to the 6th power. It's a little bit over 2.1 billion. With the M3, Medeco3, because you're able to add those stepped sliders, now you can add 6 side bidding positions to that equation. That's 6 depths times 6 angles to the 6th power, and then you multiply that by 6 side bidding positions. So now you're at 13 billion theoretical combinations. And you know, it may seem insignificant to some, but that really, really helps putting a large-scale master key system on one keyway. And that really opens up some possibilities. So say what you will about it. You can say it was a lazy way to expend the patent or whatever, but when it comes to master keying capabilities, it was an awesome addition, because like I said, I mean, we've gone from 2.1 billion theoretical combinations to now over 13 billion. So that's pretty cool. And basically that's all there is to the slider, M3 slider. Thanks.